Hey guys, we are building an onboarding application with Power Apps and Microsoft SQL Server. And this is a little bit of a pickup from last week where I had the notes and the video here. Now, these notes that I create on the videos are actually publicly available, and I'm going to provide the link here for you guys. It's powerplatformlinks.com. So I created this as a resource to be a convenient thing for you guys to access, so you can get up my notes and see how I link things together and such. I'm using a tool called Obsidian, which I love very much. So I recommend checking it out if you like some type of like an organizational app, good for things like gathering requirements or a wiki or all kinds of purposes, you know. So what will we do this week? What will we be doing on this live stream? Well, let's talk a little bit about where we left things off last week, okay? We talked about what a big boy database means, and referring to SQL Server there. And we talked about why you'd want to use SQL Server, why you wouldn't want to use SQL Server. And we talked a little bit about Azure, setting up Azure SQL. We created a database. We created a little app. Good morning, Rick and Ganesh. Keeping an eye on the chat here. And I went into creating, actually utilizing ChatGPT to create all of the requirements that I needed, minus the visual stuff, such as the wireframes. Okay. So the application that I'm writing for several purposes, but as the company that I created is growing, I want to have an app to onboard employees, clients, staff, and make sure all the paperwork is in for the accountant. And but I didn't want it to be just an onboarding app. I wanted something to be an engaging app that after they're part of the organization, that they're going to continue to engage. And I want to know how they're satisfied as an employee. Is there stuff that they're doing in their job that they don't care so much for? And maybe I team them up with somebody who loves to do the stuff that they hate. And I subscribe to the thought. I heard this advice. I have no idea where I heard it from, but what you want to do, you think, oh, customers are number one. In a way, they are. That's really the income coming in, paying for the bills. But if you take care of your employees and your staff, I believe that trickles down to my customers. Okay, so I'm also going to be using this application for all my onboarding students. Okay, so if you end up, signing up as an onboarding student, and I should probably make something visible here. Let's see if this is the right one. So I've got an overlay here. Yeah, that's it. So there's a link right there. If you go there, if you want to know more, you can. And you might be one of the individuals that both we and you feel is a good fit. And you very well might be using this application that I'm building. And then I'm going to bring up a different overlay that has a different link. Okay, this is a free community. So I post my videos as they come out, any type of news. And also it's a better way to answer people's questions over YouTube comments. Because in YouTube comments, you can't share your screen or create a little Loom video or, inside the comments. So that's probably a better way to actually engage in conversation with me is over on that community. So I'll make that go away. So what we're going to do is we're going to continue where we left off here. Okay. Now I need to make sure that I have, and for you accelerator students, if I see you sharing your video, I'll bring you on. And if you hide your video, I'll take you off as a hint to me that you don't want to be on for that segment. All right.
Hello,
so what's that?
It's Dave.
Yeah. How you doing, Dave?
Good. How you doing?
Good. All right, so let me pull up the right window here. And we'll bring up the Power App and show you where we're at. Okay, and what I will do. Here, I need you to have a list of really good dad jokes to tell if the viewers are waiting for me to pull something up.
I will.
Give me a nugget of life wisdom to share, or even Jeff or Dave. I got one. Experience is what you get when you don't get what you want.
Okay, my
so
two.
Power. What's that?
Go ahead.
Finish what you're if Power Apps is getting you down, you know what? It's experience.
That's right. That's exactly what it is. I kind of my angle on that. My life philosophy is, number one. Of course, you know it. You know both of these. You know, it's never easy. That's one of my favorite saying. It's never easy. And the second one is, they don't always do what you want.
That's the truth.
They just don't always do what you want. No matter who they are, they don't always do what you want. So
yeah. So this is the app. This is where we left off with, where we had a users table. Okay, and I wanted to be able to add and edit users for the system. Okay, so just sort of, I am building another SQL Server application with Power Apps that will help somebody implement the Getting Things Done system by David Allen, which is a very popular organizational system. So after a while, I'll actually show you where this is all going. But as you can see, it's going to be I would say at least a medium-sized application, maybe a smaller, large application. And this is just the beginning of the tables of the ERD diagram. So, so if I open up the user here, I can right-click and say, select the first 1,000 users. Okay, and you see that I am a user here. Okay. Now that's for getting things done. So I want to get out of that. Let's go into, need to make sure I'm in the right instance and everything. Here it is, onboarding. All right. So what I'm going to do is, for now, I'm just going to say close all, but this, I'll close that one. So let's take a look at what we have so far for this onboarding application. And we just have the user. So now if I select the top 1,000 rows here, we actually have 3 records. That's what I was expecting. When I only saw one, I'm like, wait, I wasn't opening up the right table. So this is where we're at so far. We have a single table. And then if we go over to my links here, I was fairly sure. Yeah, you see this sample objects onboarding. Okay, so we have this onboarding. That up there. Here. There we go. So I'm going to put us at the bottom so we're not covering anything up. And let's go over this. So here's the general application description. And what I meant to do with all of this is have that in the notes so you guys can access it as well. Okay, so I just want to work with this. Let's see if it brought it over in a table, and it did. Okay, this is looking good. I like the how it pasted over. Okay, so I don't want to use Word. I want to be using Obsidian because I can very easily share this with you guys. Okay. what I've got right now, if I go up to the top, okay, this is the general description. Whenever I tell people, like, listen, you got to define your application first before you start digging in and getting on the requirements. This is the first phase. And a lot of times what I recommend is, a lot of times I get a request, hey, I need an app. I need an onboarding app for new employees. That's all I get. I'm like, well, can you tell me more? And then you might get more of this. So, and then you have to start asking more questions. Hopefully they give you more along the lines of more of a detailed type of thing. And then you identify all the nouns in here that most likely will become entities within your application. Okay. Now, if you identify nouns in there that your application won't manage at all, then you would leave those out. Okay. An example of that I've given, I do have a whole series of videos. There's a playlist called Building a Work Order System for a Garage, where they do a service on cars, tire rotation, oil change, maybe rebuild an engine, something like that. And in the description of the app, the customer comes in and stands in front of the office staff who is behind a computer. And that bit of information there. Okay, computers are now. Does your application need to manage the computers for the organization? No, we just want to manage the technicians, the work, the customers, and how all that, the workflow. So just because it's a noun doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be an entity, but you need to create a list of, I'm sure ChatGPT could probably take a bunch of paragraphs of something and you paste, hey, give me all the entities out of this. I'm sure it could do that. Also, you might want to look at verbs. So if customers come in and create sales or place orders, well, right there, you need to identify the nouns that your application needs to manage. And those become either relationships between tables, between entities, like a customer and a sale table. But they could also be hinting at an underlying workflow that your application needs to manage. Okay. And then beyond that, here's all the features that we're going to have in our application. User registration and profile management. And some of this will be done by M365. Okay. Such as the user registration. Well, they need to be created in, the M365 admin center. Okay. They'll be given a username, which becomes their email, and you'll specify a password. You can specify if they need to reset it, all that type of stuff. And then logging in would be done through M365 as well. And but profile management, I'm definitely want to do that. So if people want to upload their own photo, and I can actually integrate that with M365. I can create an app. They upload an image, and it actually tells the M365 system, like, hey, this is their image, and then it will appear like in their Outlook and everything. So it's sort of a nice thing that integrates with Azure AD. Document upload and management. So let's say somebody upload, they need to sign a contract or an agreement, a non-disclosure agreement, that type of thing, non-compete, or any type of documents like that. Or they might need to upload a scanned image of their driver's license or their identification for tax purposes. There's all kinds of documents that would probably need to be uploaded. Okay. Dynamic checklist creation and progress tracking. So let's say I create a list called orientation and onboarding. Okay. So they might have a listing of 15 videos to watch or things that you agree to, like, yes, I've received the employee handbook. Yes, I've read it. That type of thing. Or with dealing with customers, like, hey, this is how you get around in all the different systems that we have, like school and M365. And I sort of like, here's a step, create a new profile within Edge so all your books and cookies aren't confused, So smart email notifications. Let's say after 90 days, we want to do a 90-day review or a 90-day check-in with some people. Okay. So, now, Jeff, is that dash check-in? Oh, where did Jeff go?
Where'd
There he
Jeff
is.
go?
I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm trying to see.
I typed check-in in one word. It gave me a red squiggle. I'm like, Jeff, what is that? So I went with their suggestion.
Yeah.
So dynamic questionnaire creation with enforced data requirements. So think about this. So yeah, questionnaire is definitely something that I want to have in this system, but I want it to be dynamic. So if somebody else, let's say I have this application done and somebody wants to buy it from me, or they say, hey, I want to do, some type of software as a service or something, whoever is using it outside of me using it. Okay. I want them to dynamically be able to add a set of questions that would be dynamic, that would be data driven, okay, with enforced data requirements. So maybe the data types, and also it's like, hey, you can't complete this questionnaire until you hit this I accept at the bottom, something like that. Branching in questionnaires, okay, so that's sort of related. And then if you say that, let me think of a good example here. Are you interested in moving up or to taking on a new role within this? That might be a good response. But they say yes. It's like, okay, well, what would you like to do instead of, how would you like to grow within the organization? That type of thing. If they say yes, that would be dynamically asked of them. Feedback system for user happiness, suggestions, and constructive criticism. Absolutely, that's very valuable. Data managed by staff, such as start date, enrollment date, that type of stuff. Reporting in analytics. So these are all the features that I plan on having there. I thought this would be a good, what I call an MVP, a minimal viable product. So we also have a data dictionary. So these are the tables. I've already created the user table. We'll create a document, checklist, questionnaire, question, answers to questions. Okay. And then here we've got the user story, the user stories, the screen listings. Okay, so we'll be building this part by part. I believe that we might want to just jump in and sort of flesh out exactly. So this is something that ChatGPT created for me, and I want to start building this. And as I'm working on each table, I'm going to think through some things. It's like, I really don't like how they implemented that. I'm going to make this modification, that type of thing. So,
Darren, if I can interrupt just a little bit here.
Sure. Please do.
Something I like to do when I'm building a big system from scratch is, and especially if I'm thinking about the end users. Oftentimes the end users aren't just the people that are at the keyboard. Sometimes they're the bosses that are kind of looking at stuff. And I like to create a collection of obscure data that bosses tend to like to look at. Ooh. Like, for instance, if you go back to your feature list, if you could do that real quick.
Yeah.
Something I like to think about doing is I'll create obscure data, things that a lot of times you think on the outside you don't care. Like maybe the number of documents that are loaded into the system for like you had a place where you were talking about where you were making I can't think what I'm trying to say here. When you're onboarding, you're doing like non-disclosures, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe you want to have a collection of those. Like, how many non-disclosures have we got in our system? How many? Because you do, when you grab data like that and you do averages and sums of those different data points of your features that you have. Mm-hmm. I was just thinking about this when you're going through your feature list. Email notifications. How many email notifications are we doing per day? How many per week? Things like that. Those obscure data points, sometimes you can look at those on a high level, and you can actually see how your company is doing as a whole.
You know what
And
that
I
makes
don't
me think of, Kurt? I want a dashboard
exactly
with
a dashboard.
KPIs.
That's kind of
Right.
where I was going with that. Exactly.
Right.
You want a dashboard, but the dashboard is going to be for like a management level type stuff, not, you know, and stuff that you don't normally think of every day, you know? So as I'm writing my code, I'll be trying to think of what's the average number per day of notifications that we generate. What's the total of my non-disclosures. Um, and I'm sorry I can't speak very good right now. Sometimes when I get into these modes where I'm listening and I'm trying to understand stuff, and then I try to explain something, it's like my brain's got to shift over to another area and it doesn't do so well. So I'm sorry if I'm chopping
We
that.
haven't warmed up yet. We'll get to the warm up in about another 20 minutes, and we'll just be going. I
Yeah,
notice that a lot of times.
yeah, once I get to going, you guys got to watch out. But yeah, but you understand what I'm trying to say then, right? You
Yeah, it's a
guys.
great idea.
So as you're building your features and as I'm writing my program, I'll think, you know what, that'd be a kind of a cool thing. I wonder how many, what's my average of this? And so I'm going to collect that data. You can never have enough data, I don't think, and you might not even think it's important in the moment, but 5 years from now, that might be really huge, so it changes. So anyway, there you have it.
Yeah.
That's my
So
2 cents.
Ellie said, how many FTEs? The status of the FTEs. So I believe FTE is full-time employee, perhaps.
Yeah.
Full-time equivalent, I think.
Yeah.
Employee.
Yeah. And you could actually look at the hours for those, you could break that stuff down. There's so many obscure data points that you could be collecting. You guys saw the last live office hours we had. We talked about my little Foundry application that did sleeves. That's kind of where those kind of things come from. Those kind of programs come from those obscure data points. You start collecting these data points, and all of a sudden now you got another program you need to write. And so anyway, yeah.
Very good. Yeah. So if you guys have any more ideas, just put them in the chat, or if you're a panelist, you just tell me. Yeah. So these are great ideas. So I like this. So this is what happens if you have a meeting with the stakeholders and the users, the managers that all are interested in the project, and you start talking about these, maybe have a whiteboard or something like this on your screen, having a meeting or in a Zoom, you're sharing your screen where all kinds of ideas just start coming out. There was a few weeks ago we were doing an ERD diagram for something. You guys remember this? I know
Yeah, it was a lawn mowing app.
Yeah, Jeff,
it was Jeff's lawn mowing app.
Is that app done yet, Jeff?
The app is not done yet.
See what had happened. See what had happened was
right.
Well, we need to get back around to doing that. So this application is more on the intermediate, maybe even on the side of advanced, because the SQL Server has a little bit of a learning curve. But I'd like to get back to doing some basic projects from A to Z. We might be able to knock most of that out in a single live stream some Saturday. So that's just a thought. We can mix it up. We don't always have to be doing SQL Server for the next.
We couldn't even. We couldn't even come up with an ERD in a single search. we get going. It's so funny. Yeah. That's the way development is, though.
Yeah. So what I would like to do for you guys is sample projects onboarding. And I want to share this link with you guys. So if you want to bring it up on another screen, you can. So there is the link there. Now you're not going to see my changes in real time. What I have to do is click a button to publish it. So that's a little bit of drawback here. Okay. So I'm going to go down to the database stuff here. So we have users in there. And the next thing would be documents. So and I believe we've talked a little bit about diagramming. Yeah. So, Beth says, didn't get the notification that you're going live. Yeah. So just FYI, typically we'll go live 10 a.m. every Saturday, unless I'm sick, vacationing, or whatever, or if it's just a Saturday where I'm just doing an accelerated type of thing where it's just for them. But I would say like 75% of the time we're going to be having a Saturday morning, usually at 10. Now this morning I was running behind. I wasn't quite prepared as I would like to be. So I just moved it back 15 minutes. So just FYI, as far as in predictability and that type of thing. Okay, so this is the user table. Now I've added some additional things that more so than they had. Okay, so if I open up Notepad here. How fancy Notepad has come along in the last 20 years, or more years. It's pretty much the same thing, right? So this is what it suggests that I did, and I sort of put my own stink on it, as Kurt and I like to say. On every table, I want to have a created on, created by, last modified on, and last modified by. Every table will have an ID there. Okay, so let's create one. I'm going to create a new table here, and this is going to be document. And ID here, integer. Okay, and I'm going to use this thing here, and I'm going to look for identity. I'm going to set that to yes. So for you old VB programmers or Visual Studio people, F4 will bring up properties. And so we've got ID, and now I've got on this thing here, this column. Sometimes I was hoping that I would see the icon up here. Designer, that might be it, and it is. Okay, look at that. So here's a little toolbar. Okay, here at the top, and there's a little key there. So I'm going to click on that key. Now I'm going to try to make all this bigger for you guys. I can't zoom in like a browser window, but it's this little key thing right here. Set primary key, and I put a key right there. Okay, and every table I'm going to have created on, created by, last modified on, last modified by. I'm going to copy those. Paste those in. Okay. Now, realize that you can set up your own defaults in here. So if I click created on, I've got a default value or binding. So does anybody know the TSQL language version of get the current date and time? Does anybody know that?
It's not now.
Nobody?
It's not now.
Get date.
Oh, get date.
Yeah, it's get date. You put that there. If we don't specify the created on, that's what it's going to be. Now, if the only thing that's happened to the row is just the row was created, well, why wouldn't we have that in the modified as well? We don't modify to be blank. Okay, do that. And document table. Okay, so the other things that we will need in here, insert a column, and we'll call this user ID. And there'll be a one-to-many relationship between this user and the documents. Okay, user ID will be an integer. Okay, it'll be a foreign key. Now, what I'm going to do, you see the little star here? What I'm going to do, can I make this bigger? Yeah, I can make the ERD diagram bigger, but I can't make anything else bigger here within SQL Management Studio. I'm going to hit Control S. Okay, so it's a good idea to get that Control S like every 2 minutes or so. It'd be cool to have like a little timer that will just ding every 2 minutes to remind you to hit Control S, both in SQL Server and Power Apps, right? to create those manual restore points. Okay, so what you want to do when you create these relationships is you're going to click on the foreign key. And the foreign key is always on the knee side of the relationship tables. Okay, so think about this. This is how Kurt taught me over 20 years ago. Can users have multiple documents? Yes. Can a document have many users associated with it? Not really, not in the way that I'm thinking of it, how I'm going to be using this user table. However, we could have, if documents could have many users. Okay, for example, an employee handbook. Well, that isn't about a particular user. It would just be a document in general. And in that case, I could have an employee handbook as a document. And then I would want to keep track of what users have read it. In that case, we would need to create a mapping table called, has reviewed document. And inside that middle table, you'd have the user ID and a document ID. And so that would be considered a mapping table. That's how logically you create a many-to-many. In a relational database system, there is no many-to-many relationship that you would just pull over and drag, like I'm about to do. Between this user ID, I'm going to drag it, and I'm going to drag it over to the ID, which is the primary key. I'm going to drop it, and I've got some things. And it wants you to confirm, okay, so we've got this user ID that points to ID here. This is the primary key table, and this is the foreign key table. And it looks great. And you can give this will be a name. This relationship will actually be an object in SQL Server. And an object will have properties that you can manage. But that's the name that you're going to give it, okay? And so if you want to have your own naming convention for these, you can go at it. I typically just go with whatever it gives me. If you're working for typically a large organization, they'll have dozens of pages within a document for coding, not only for coding standards, but also naming things within databases, okay? So I'm going to click OK. All right, and we're going to look at this a little more. And this all looks good. Typically, I go with the defaults for this type of thing. Now, if I wanted to get complex, I might go through these and look at this. I didn't want that to be a topic for this particular live stream. Perhaps we could go through more of that later on.
Well, I kind of want to go backwards just a little bit there.
Sure. Yeah.
Because we got some people on here that haven't really worked with data too much yet. And so I just kind of want to let them know that this relational database tape, like when you're dealing with many-to-manys and one-to-manys and those kinds of things, that's just about as complex as it gets for database management, right? So if you're overwhelmed with that topic, don't feel alone. A lot of people are. It's like the hardest thing to get, but once you get that, then you got everything, So just kind of don't get overwhelmed in that moment. Stay focused on trying to understand that because it's really important. And I also wanted to just mention that Darren and I did recently a video on a many-to-many relationship on how to set them up and simplify them. Okay, because he's going to be getting into some complex many-to-many type deals here. And I just want you guys to be able to go backwards a little bit. If you guys need to, go look at those videos because it's really the same concept. It's the same concept. He's just got a lot of other fields going on in it.
Yeah, so within our community environment, our school environment, you can access that video on many-to-many relationships. But if you're just out here on YouTube, I do have one. Let's see here, relationships. If you're ever looking for one of my videos, type Darren Neeson, whatever you want to know. Yeah. Is it working? Okay.
Yeah, sometimes we get going in these projects when we're doing these big projects like this live. Sometimes we get going and we tend to assume because we've done it for so much that it's like this is redundant stuff, and it will be for you guys too that are just getting started. It's going to get redundant because you're going to do this all the time. But it was kind of a tough concept for me to learn when I first started, and so I just kind of want to make sure that if you guys are feeling kind of overwhelmed in it, to not.
So this is the video here. I'm going to share this. Again, if you're an accelerator student, there's a lot more stuff out there in the school environment, but this is a really good one. I think this is an excerpt of a much larger video.
It is.
But if you see this thumbnail here that looks like that, that's what that is.
And whenever you see our faces looking crazy like that, you know that it's a good video because that's what we do. You know.
Yeah.
Look at that. Look at that right there.
Look at this guy. Look at this guy. What? Yeah, that guy right
there.
there.
That's a good video right there. That's a good video right there. You know,
mind blown.
I am focused.
And also, just for the sake of convenience for you guys, I'm pasting that link over there so you can go directly to it. All right. Yeah.
Now, sometimes, Darren, like when you were talking about, now I think in your situation with your document ID, you were looking at the possibilities of many documents for one person, and or being read many times. You could, if you only had like one document, like let's say he was talking about just the maybe a safety manual, and everybody had to read a safety manual. You could put that out there in your mapping table and have another item out there on your mapping table to so you can some of these things that are applying to each person, like statuses or stat I. Is that the way to say that, Jeff? Stat I. You could actually include that in your mapping table. Now, I don't know, Darren, did you go into the mapping table yet? Or did I just jump ahead of you?
Not in this session, but that video that you just referenced, that I pasted the link to, does go with that.
Right. But you were getting ready to do a mapping table in this session, aren't you?
Well, I just wanted to give an example. So let's just really brief here, like in under 3 minutes. Let's talk about, Kurt, what are all the relationships? So if we're talking about a relational database system, which I think is probably the most popular, well, I shouldn't say that. If you're writing an application relational database system, there are other ones out there that people use for applications that aren't. That's like the main way to store data. I guess the most popular is a single file table in the form of an Excel spreadsheet or a Google sheet, right?
Sure.
I'm thinking, Kurt, of at least 3 different relationship types. Would you agree with that, or are there actually 4?
There's. I mean, I don't count the one-to-one. I mean,
that's one of them that I was thinking of. Yeah.
I don't count the one-to-one, right? So you just got the single table, because if you've got 2, and when we say a one-to-one, that just means, like, let's say you have a customer and you have I don't even know how to do a one-to-one. It's like I can't even think. My mind doesn't even think one-to-one anymore. Help me out, Darren. What would be a one-to-one?
Well, I think why it's hard for somebody like you and me to even go down the road of thinking about a one-to-one is, like, if it's a one-to-one, why don't we just have one table that has
exactly
data, right?
Exactly.
I've got a great example for you, and that is, let's say we're writing a medical type of system, okay? And we've got users that use the system, and we have different types of users. Let's say for a hospital, we got doctors and nurses, we have staff, we could have patients that need to log into the system, okay? So we have a table that would have that type of stuff, and you might want to break it down into different tables. And I probably, Kurt, you and I would do that. We would say, maybe we had it staff, and then we'd have patients. Okay. But let's say for people who actually do medical work, okay, so doctors, nurses, technicians, physician assistants that actually would interface with patients in any way, shape, or form. Well, they need to be licensed by the state. Okay. And there's all kinds of information. What are the credentials? What's their physician ID? What is, there's all kinds of information that would need to be stored for those type of users. Okay. But there's going to be a lot of staff that work at a hospital, maybe an executive, and typically executives within a hospital are also physicians, but there are people that bring you food if you're staying at a hospital, or clean the room. And there's all kinds of maybe facilities people that might change a light bulb or break down a wall or some type of change that needs to happen, that they really don't interface with patients. Okay, so you might have a bunch of information. Say we've got all these fields here. You think of a user type that's got maybe 25 fields that are only used by 20% of the records that are going into users. Okay. I would probably put that into a separate table. And then in that separate table, let's just use a quick example here.
Yep.
Doctors. Okay, just a simple example. And
that's a good example though, Darren, where you only got like 25% of the records are going to have that information, but yet it could be any of, just you could break that into a separate one, and that would be a good one-to-one example. Yeah.
In this case, it's a user ID.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I've got my license. How do you spell license, Jeff? I need to start paying you for all this work I'm making you do. I found out you have a master's in English. I'm thinking about all kinds of things that I can call on you for.
Right.
License number. Okay. But here's the user ID, and I would drag this over. Now this will be interesting. User ID, and it's going to be a one-to-one. I don't know that tables and column specific. I don't do anything special in the relationship to specify a one-to-one. The plural of status is statuses. Okay, not status. What did you say, Kurt? Stati or something?
Stat-I.
Right.
Funny.
So when you create a one-to-one, it might look like a one-to-many, but there's not going to be. This will be. This user ID should be unique within this table. Put it that way. So as far as in relationships, you have one-to-one, you have one-to-many. Some people say, after they say one-to-many, they say many-to-one. Maybe. I mean, it's just the relationship is just turned around. And then you have many-to-many. And a many-to-many relationship, again, like the one-to-one, isn't communicated or depicted with this. What you'll have is a table in the middle. Some people call that a mapping table. Okay. And so you have a logical type of many-to-many relationship rather than a relationship denoted by just this line here.
Yeah.
Very good. So I'm not going to deal with doctors here. So I'm going to right click. Does anybody have questions before I delete this on what a one-to-one relationship is?
Everybody understanding all that?
Yeah. Sort of want to stop. I'm keeping an eye on the comments and also the private chat for the panelists here. And I'll give you 5 seconds to throw something out there real quick.
Bjorn says that stati is the German plural.
Oh,
Not
now,
see how
Kurt, you're
guys-
Swedish. Where did you pick that up from?
Right.
I don't know.
German.
I don't know. Must have been from Jeff when he was having a bad day. When he gets mad, he starts speaking German. So
Oh, really? All right. So moving on. Oh, I do have something for you guys. If you're getting anything helpful out of this, a comment or even a like really helps the channel, and lets people like you know this is good content. Much appreciated. All right, so I am going to take this one out. I'm not seeing any questions or comments about this one-to-one relationship that I was trying to go over. And I'm going to say delete table. And it says tables from database. Hopefully it's only going to do this one. Are you sure you want to permanently? You know what I'm going to? No, I don't want to. I didn't mean to click help. Are you sure? No, I'm not sure. I want to create this relationship first. Delete relationship. Are you sure you want to delete? Yes. And now I'm going to delete this one. Very good. I'm going to hit save there. All right, so going back to our document, something that we should have here would be document name. Okay, and let's make that varchar. 255 characters hopefully is enough characters to have for a document. And I always like these fields to be above all these others. I don't know if I can drag it here within this tool, so I'll have to do that later. So we got document name, document type. And a lot of times that's called like a MIME type.
So do you mean there by document type, like whether it's a Word document or an Excel document or something like that?
Yes.
Right.
Let me see. Looking for that other word that might be a good way to phrase that. But yeah, something else that we can do. Okay, I'm going to save this. We have other, actually, it might be here. Description. And this is actually a good idea if you have something to specify to put something in the description here. So let's do, like there's a way to specify, hey, this is like a movie, or let's say we could say, oh, Word document, but there are actually different extensions. I think it's called it actually is MIME. All right, so let me show you what I was looking for here. So let's go look at doc here. Okay, so this one is kind of document. So for a Word document here, just keeping an eye on the comments there. Yeah, we've got Word document, and it has two different things there. HTML. So I almost want to have this type of thing. And it's like a standard whenever a document is embedded within a web page, there's a standard of how it is. Oh, the third column is what I'm thinking of. Yeah. So Word document, I got application Word. Here it says application, V&D, all this other information, you know. And it looks like we could have more than one type here. It says audio MIDI, audio X MIDI. That might be good to know. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have MIME type. And that's going to be varchar. And I'm going to make it 255 just so there's always enough space in there. And now I'm going to say document. Spell that right. Varchar 25. Usually it's only 3 characters, but I've seen some document extensions in a very rare case where it's actually almost a whole word or two. So I'll leave that as 25. What else does it want us to do here? An upload date. Well, upload date would actually be here with the created on. So I'm not sure if I want to have another date time in there. I'm just trying to think of examples where we would actually want a date time stamp on this, and nothing is coming to mind. Now that's all that they had for these documents. What I'm thinking is that would be good for this is a requirement. Like, hey, this document was uploaded that is going to fulfill some requirement somewhere else that I set up for a user. Okay. So for example, I'm going to create a new table here. and we'll call this environment. And of course, every table is going to have an ID. It's going to be an int, and it's going to be that. And I need to make it an identity. Okay. We're always going to have created on, created by, last modified on, and so forth. So we click on that, paste that. So we've got all that type of stuff. And you know what I should have done is those columns. I actually like having those defaults in there, which I did on that table. So I'm going to actually use those instead. Okay. Also, what I'd like to have as a default in all my tables is almost every table. Now think about the database systems or data sources we worked with before, because I wouldn't call SharePoint a database system. It's a data source. They always create a title field, and then Dataverse, they always create a name field, or they try to get you to, you know. I'd sort of like to make that a standard inside MySQL applications, is have that name. So I've got display name. Let's actually use name here. I'm looking to make sure I don't have anything else there. Okay. So I want every table to have a name, because let's think about this. So if we have a drop-down list of, let's say, departments, what we're going to be storing over here, let's say for a user, like what department they're in, is we're going to have the department ID. And instead of having to, the table was out here, and we had drop-down lists that we copy and paste or something to save ourselves time. It's looking at the ID and the name. And it doesn't matter what entity we're trying to pull up. If we have that as a standard for a particular application, you can reuse a lot of stuff. You guys have seen me create a screen just how I like it, and then I'll just duplicate that screen. And all the code just works because and I changed the data source and it still works because a lot of the same fields are the same. So same thing for context variables, local variables. If you have a LOC variable, you have a context variable, local variable that is created with LOC current record. Well, almost every screen has got like this main record that it's looking at, right? If it's an edit screen. So if you duplicate one that you've done before, instead of saying LOC current customer record, well, that may not be an appropriate variable name on another screen where you're dealing with a different instance. So I try to find things like that, almost as a design pattern that decision has already been made. It's consistent all the way through the system. What do you like? Okay, so I said all that to say this is I'm going to put a name in
I don't
here.
know who says that all the time.
55. Okay. So what might be a sample value in name for a requirement? It might be identification. Okay. What are the types of documents? So we might upload a driver's license, a social security or social insurance number. What are the types of things? Or we could say, tax documents. There might be 3 of those, So in that case, we're gonna have a one-to-many relationship. I'm gonna create a little foreign key in here, and we'll call this. Actually, it's gonna be on this side. Okay, we'll have one requirement with many documents. So the foreign key is always inserted in the foreign key, the foreign table. So I'm keeping an eye on the comments here. I see an internal comment from Jeff. Are you going to have a QMS? If so, would it be beneficial to have a QMS location? What is a QMS, Jeff?
A quality management system. So I'm thinking about like if you had some forms are going to be administrative, some forms are going to be for customers, some forms are going to be, that kind of thing. So you would have maybe a separate file for those different forms. And then are they going to be, are they going to have a form code, like if you had NUS for NICE US, dash CF for customer forms dash 001, and that would be in the footer, you know, and then so you might have 10 customer forms and they would be numbered like that, you know, or your administration forms that the middle letters might be AF, you know, but I just wondered if you might have a location identifier in that within your documents there.
So how would that help us? So like, let's say you're looking at all the documents that support, let's say, a quality requirement for the whole organization. Would that be okay?
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're building a system where if they have that need, then yes, I would add a column here for the you mentioned like a QMS identifier, perhaps.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
That's a better way to say it, probably. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So if you're going to do that, that could be easily added here. Absolutely. So for here to tie in the requirement, what you could do is say requirement ID, make it an integer. And then what I'll do, I don't need this one, so I'll delete that column. And I will drag this over to the ID. And I'm just going to go with the defaults. The defaults always give me what I'm looking for anyway. Something else I like almost on every table is either notes or comments. Okay, so over here for the user, we have user notes and internal notes. So I think I'm just going to have notes because I wanted two different type of notes for users. I had those in there like that. But notes, we can just make that text, which is pretty much unlimited amount of information there. Okay, so create those as notes. So that requirements goes down to here. Okay, I'm liking this. I'm going to hit save. All right. Now, this could go a lot of different ways. In a particular situation, in a use case, maybe we might have like review, like, hey, has this document been reviewed? So let's say a new employee is being onboarded, they upload their documents. There might need to be somebody from HR that needs to review those. So, I mean, when you're designing and playing an application, things can get really sprawled out, thinking about all the cool things to have. And sometimes if you're the best person to be the project manager for the project, because a lot of times, a lot of projects, I don't have a project manager there to say, okay, guys, listen, we're just trying to get a minimal viable product here, or try to reel in some things. Like, listen, those features we'll put on the backlog, and that will be more for like a phase 2 type of thing, you know? So,
you know, that's kind of why I like your feature list when you were going down your line list of features. Yeah. I think it really helps organize your program just a little bit. So you kind of got a wide angle look at things. So, you know, and you don't have to put all those features in at one time. You know, it kind of helps you modulate your program a little bit. You know?
Yeah. What I find is you can just go do this almost indefinitely. Just go on and you spend months and months just having more meetings. Oh, this would be nice. Oh, this would save us time. It's like, listen, just get a small set of requirements so the programmer can go up and do it. You guys can continue brainstorming. When he comes back with some of these screens, you're going to have 10 times more input for requirements.
Right. I mean, if we continued this, if we continue this vein of communication during this live stream, and we extended this until 4 o'clock, we'd have this application making our coffee for us in the morning. You know, we would be just about doing
power automate.
We'd be creating Chinese food or something, you know, and, you know, I mean, we'd have so many features in this thing. So finally, you're right. You gotta cut it off at some point, man.
Yeah.
Nick and I, I really like Nick because he says in the private chat, been there many times. I really like Nick because he's got a mind like mine. He's interested in so many things that he never accomplishes anything because we just keep going, I just love it.
So something that the ChatGPT is suggesting based on the requirements, what I gave it. So it's got a checklist table. Now I'm going to throw a thought out here to you guys. Couldn't we, and then we got questionnaire. Now it looks like this is a mapping table because it's got a questionnaire ID. Well, maybe not. I was thinking that perhaps it would, but you have got question down here. Oh, here's a questionnaire ID that will look to that. Questionnaire, then a question that would be associated with a questionnaire. Okay. And then you have an answer. Okay. So this would be, it had a checklist up here. What I think when I look at a design like this is we've got a questionnaire, question, and an answer. Couldn't checklist just be a questionnaire and the answer is always a yes, no Boolean? What do you think about that, Kurt?
Well, I got to think about that a little bit. I mean, it seems like could be more, but I don't know. I want to say, yeah, you're right. But then I'm thinking,
One thought I was having was be like if the questionnaire was for a customer, and then the checklist would be more like administrative to make sure certain things have been accomplished. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Absolutely. On all the different stati that are going on within your
right.
Just for some reason, this just triggered something. Hopefully I'm not digressing too much, but the QAMS thing that he just brought up, I don't know, because maybe that's not something we should be poo-pooing too quickly. I don't know. I think maybe, especially for your organization right now, maybe with this new thing that you got going with this accelerator program, for instance, you might have different forms. Like you could have a form for a rating system. You could have a form for when people want to have like recommendations for changes. Maybe a complaint form. There's could be different. I don't know. Could be a table in there somewhere. I don't know. Again, though, maybe that's going beyond the scope of what you're trying to do here.
Sure.
Well, what I'm thinking of, we could have a checklist that's just for the internal staff, and it's not for the people who are being onboarded, right?
Right. Right.
Why can I use the questionnaire question answers? Have those three tables be multi-purpose, like they could be like internal, external type of set of things,
Absolutely.
And I might have a questionnaire if I'm writing the system for a hospital. I might have different checklists for doctors than I would for a patient or somebody that's cleaning the patient's rooms. So it would actually be a certain role somewhere in probably the questionnaire. There might be a table here for, we might have questionnaire types, okay, or role, type of roles. And then if you go into a role, if you're assigned a role like a patient, well, there's going to be questions. Hey, what's your insurance ID? Give me there might be a document like your insurance card that you have in your wallet, and all the information like the what's your spouse name? They might need to be called or something. And then somebody who has a role of a person that cleans up a patient room, their questionnaire might be, even though they're an employee, there's onboarding for an employee, but there might be like, okay, so when I was in the hospital, I saw somebody come in once a day. They cleaned the sink, they sort of cleaned up the floor, sort of mopped, and they remade the bed or whatever. So I'm thinking we could reuse this like questionnaire engine that we build and it could just morph into whatever's needed based on data. I sort of see that as an exciting challenge. Don't you
Yeah,
see?
I like it. It could be a whole nother app there.
All right. So right now I'm going to keep the fact that a checklist might be interesting, but I'm going to skip over it for now and just work on this questionnaire thing. And I'm going to make sure as I'm thinking through it that it can handle checklists. Okay. This is good stuff.
I think so.
You know, that checklist too, you think about this like from an HR type standpoint, just to have a list of things that you have to go over with any new onboard person. And then, you know, you just check them off as you go through, and how valuable that would be to make sure and have documentation that you've covered everything that needs to be covered with every new person.
Absolutely. I'm going to show you guys something that I see all the time. If somebody was trying to, but let's say you're new to Power Apps and you think, oh, I want to create a questionnaire application or a survey or a checklist. It goes by many names. Okay. In fact, what I would like to show you guys quickly is I do have a video that is very useful for that. And let me bring this up quickly. Okay. Kurt, I think this is one of the first few videos that we did together. Okay.
Is that me, or is that a ghost of me? That looks like the ghost of me right there.
Yeah, you needed an upgrade in your lighting, your camera at that point, right?
Well, I think I was actually using my phone at the time.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I think I was using my phone as I think I was what do you call it? I was dexing with my I had one of those Z folds and I was dexing. Yeah, that's what happened. That's the result of a dex right there.
You were out of the office on remote view.
So I will share this link just in case somebody's building a questionnaire type of thing and they're not using SQL Server. I believe we used SharePoint there. So apparently there's people that still use SharePoint with their Power Apps. You know, percentage?
A 70.
About 70. All right.
I've been told
I've heard that somewhere before. But yeah, I think of polls, checks, quizzes, surveys, and questionnaires. So you see, it's having me create a questionnaire, but you could call this different things or sort of morph it for all these different purposes, you know. So that's out there, and it's how to build a quiz app. So if you type in that title with Darren Neese, you'll find it right away. If find that link by searching. But whenever somebody creates an application, Betty said, that would be me. Okay, very cool. And I know there's quite a few accelerator students there. They need to create some type of questionnaire checklist. It's very common. Okay. Let me show you what most people and
now Patty's checklist is like a checklist on steroids. That thing that she's doing. That's amazing. Yeah. Sorry, Darren. Go ahead.
What they like to do is say, okay, question 1, bar chart. They'll say answer 1, bar chart. But we need the user. What's the user's name? And they'll also so thinking about like a spreadsheet. Okay, well, I also want to know who their email, the user's email. Okay. So we got question 1, answer 1. Okay, well, what about question 2? And then answer 2. You at all, Kurt, seeing a table like that?
I have seen them so many times.
You've seen it very many times.
Very many times.
If you ever see things that are repeating, okay, just by glancing at it, question 1, answer 1, question 2, answer 2. Well, okay, that looks like repeating. Username, user email. Okay, what you might want to start looking at it is the part that is repeated. If you see a portion of a column name being repeated, here, question, that needs to be a separate table. Okay, maybe that's that quick and fast rule of thumb of like if you see a repeating word in there, that's probably you need a question table. Oh, you might need an answer table as well. But we also need a user table. Well, we already have a user table up here. But do you see what I mean? People just working with spreadsheets, if you don't have any database type of training, especially relational type of database training, is that you'll think like this, and after getting that training, you'll know that there should be several tables in here. Nick said AH Excel. What does AH mean? I don't know. You'll have to tell me, Nick. Okay, so I'm going to delete this. So I just wanted to show that because it's very, very common. So if you've been doing that, I'm not trying to make anybody feel like they are ignorant or anything, but it's just like it's very common, you know. When I bought my first cello, and like, oh, you played cello? No. I took cello lessons. I wouldn't say me playing Twinkle Twinkle Star on cello was actually playing the cello, but I took the cello out, I got the bow, and I was holding it a certain way, and somebody who would know how to play the cello, they're like, oh, you were holding that really wrong. You're doing that incorrectly, you know, which I learned about when I started taking lessons. Is don't feel bad, but just realize that there's a better way, and I'm going to show you the better way right here, right now. Okay, so let's see.
Well, and that's also that you got to get into the normalization then too, right? You're not really normalized, so
Absolutely.
that's what you're getting ready to go into right now is normalizing it.
And what I wanted to refer to
there was one thing I wanted to say, Darren. Sorry. Sometimes it's important to have that like that though. If you're doing a report and instead of accessing a whole bunch of data at one time, sometimes it's okay to have field 1 and field 2 out there if you're just grabbing it for purposes of creating a report. You know, I've done that before. It's sometimes you can balance it out with speed.
Yeah. So there are reasons why I would denormalize a bit if the application has been written with Power Apps. Is that you don't have a way to do joins. Now you have a way to do joins in SQL Server,
Sure.
but you mentioned reporting. So there's really two different types of relational database systems. You have got something here at the bottom. Take notes because this is really good. That's a really good point, Kurt. I want to make sure that I capture that here. And what we're going to say here, we'll just call this, because there's going to be a lot of stuff here. I'm going to create a folder here. I'm going to call the relational data. Okay. And then I'm going to go in here. And we now have some information on data normalization. Okay. And then why the types of RDBS, and that stands for Relational Database System. Okay, there is online transactional processing. And then that's the type of system Kurt and probably all of us are most familiar with. And there is the acronym is escaping me here, but you'd use this for data warehouses. You spell warehouse. Maybe. A lot of times are used for reporting. Okay, and a lot of times you denormalize stuff because the data is just all over the system. Let's say you want to pull up a patient record, an employee record or something. Well, there's all these relational things and you display all the information for a single thing and it's all spread out over this stuff. So you might do like a join. That takes time pulling and querying that information with all of these different relationships. Well, if you need to do a report over and over again, each record is one of those things, and you need key pieces out of all these tables.
I'm glad you said that, Darren, because that's exactly what time. A lot of times they want these reports like in an hour. and they're all over the place. And you don't have time to go out there and build the relationships to get that done, right? So you just throw them into some fields and throw it on the screen to get that thing done. That's so many times that's the way it is. Yep.
And with an online transaction processing, let's say this is data is, well, not only is it viewed, but it's edited. Okay. Let's say you have a listing of people and you're just looking at some information, or you just have their ID, you type in their ID, hit search for, and then it comes up. As opposed to a report where, let's say you've got 10,000 employees and you need to do some type of payroll processing, going to a data warehouse where the data is denormalized and it's all there, and you'll get some repeating information. So a lot of times you might have something that runs every night or once an hour that will update the data warehouse. And once I think of the acronym that's used for data warehouses, I'm trying to think of it. It's escaping me. It might just come up on my mind here in a few minutes. So yeah, there's good reasons to denormalize data. Absolutely. Okay, so what I wanted to go look at and see that we have here, in that very video I was just talking about, Kurt, when you or I created the system, we had users, we had user answers and questions. Okay. And you see that it's got a user ID that points here and a question ID that goes there. And that's a many-to-many relationship. Okay. Yep. Now, one thing, I was trying to keep it simple. Now, that was a 2-hour live stream, 2-hour video where we talked about this. And one of the, either Kurt, you or somebody in the comment section said, okay, what about if somebody needs to take a quiz or questionnaire repeatedly? Okay, so let's say an employee review, an employee evaluation. Okay, that happens maybe the first 90 days, but after that, it happens every year around the same time. Well, we need to have, some more tables to accommodate that. And I want this system will be complex and we'll have that. Okay, for example, accelerator students, they may not want to fill it out each week, but I would like to have pulse on, how are they doing, that type of thing. That's where we have an account manager or customer success manager assigned to each of our accelerator students to keep on top of that. But it'd be good if I had a Power Apps application out there that will maybe send off an email like, hey, it's time for your weekly check-in. Please answer these questions and hit a button. And then based on those answers, somebody like Rick on our staff would look at that and like, hey, let's call and talk about this item that you brought up in the questionnaire, so I need this new system to be a lot more complex than just something like this. So that's what we're going to do here in this application. Yeah. It's exciting, isn't it? All right. So I'm going to bring up my information I had before, which are all the tables here. And yeah, I think we'll actually call it questionnaire. I was thinking about if I want to call it questionnaire, a poll, checklist, survey, that type of thing. So I'm going to use the word questionnaire. Oh. And of course, the first one's always going to be ID. And we're going to make it a key. And we're going to make it an identity. Okay. And then we're going to go off and get all these fields here. Those in. So we have all those. Oh, we should also have a name. I wanted to put that in each table. Our chart 255, just in case they want to have it long. Okay, so we've got that. Now, what they're recommending here is, Yeah, we're going to need questions and answers. Just looking for more room. I guess we don't need to see all these data types right now. So question. Those fields. That ID a key. And everything else we set up. Okay. And then a question. Question text and question type. So we have the name. I was thinking here, Kurt. Oh, left us. So for question type or a category, sometimes I wonder, do I just want to have that single line of text so it could just change? But since I'm building a system that is probably on the larger side, I might actually want to keep track of that in a separate table and add more things dynamically. Okay. So I could go up here or down here, and I will create a new table. And I'm going to call this question type. Okay. And then over here, question type, I'll have ID. Now, examples of question type would be something along the lines of, is it text? Is it single line of text, multiple lines of text? Is it a choice? Is it a yes, no, that type of thing? And I'm going to take these things here, those, paste them here. Make that a key, make that an identity. Okay. And I want to save everything. So all these database tables are created there. And I got a question type. So I have a question for you, Kurt.
Okay.
So I have a question here, and they were suggesting that I create a text field called question type, the type of question, text, voice, yes, no. You know what I mean? So I was about to do that. I'm thinking, I might want to have a separate table for question types. Which one would you have done if you were designing this system?
A separate table for question types. I mean, it would just depend on how much information you want for each type, like in the actual type. Like if you're just needing something where it's like is this going to be a rating versus you could just have a type number in there or something. But although I could see where if you were building this out for different types of entities, you would have this entity might have 5 different types of question. This entity might only have 2. So it would be better to put it in another table to do it if you're going to do it across entities.
Yeah.
Like, in other words, like if you had different interests going on, like let's say you had a corporation and this corporation was dealing with manufacturing plus sales. And so you would have different quality type questionnaires for those 2 different entities. And you might have, and that would be I think a good instance of having it in a different table.
Yeah.
But if you just have one interest, yeah.
I've got a cool example that just came to mind that you would do it one of those 2 ways based on the scenario. Okay. And the scenario is, let's say we the application that we're building needs to be like an international app that will deal with multiple language, more than one language. Okay.
Okay.
I might create, this might be a field here that would be, let's see, like question type. So it might be language. And I could just put in the word like English there. That would be just a single line as X, or hey, I speak German. But then English, there's different types of English. There's England English, there's US English, then there's Canadian English, and it's probably 99 or 98% all the same, but there are some words that are used to those different, it's like geographic so in that case, if it could be that I might want to create a language table that pretty much defines all the different languages that would show up in a drop-down list. Okay. I definitely want that as a separate table. Now here's another scenario. Let's say, okay, this application you're building is going to be multilingual. It's for Canadians. Okay. Is it ever going to need to handle people in any other countries? No, just Canadians. Well, they either speak Canadian English or Canadian French. So in that case, it's going to be 2 items. We could have the data type up here for language type. It could be a bit field, yes, no, true, false, like is English. And if it's not, if is English is false, then it's French. Okay. But let's say we're dealing with a country that has 3 languages. They always spoken these 3 languages. It's never going to change. A bit field going to work there. So you just might have like a little language code. Have it 2 characters, EN for English and FR for French, and something else for the 3rd one.
Yeah, and Darren, maybe you want to do it your first scenario anyway, because maybe even though you only have 2 languages now, maybe tomorrow they decide they want to put Chinese in there. So now you gotta do, now you gotta have to rewrite your stuff. So if you just do it from the beginning, that way you can expand it.
Project managers will swear that Canada will never speak any more than those 2 languages, right? And you say, okay, I'll write it this way. Think down the road. Let's say this is a client of yours, and you built a system for them, and somebody else, some client over here, who is in no way competition with this other company or whatever, and it's like, well, I've got some multilingual screens I'd like to transfer over, and it's like, oh, well, this one needs to handle 15 languages or a variable amount of languages.
Yep.
So if you write things the most flexible, as long as you don't go overboard and over architect or over design, which is a real thing.
Here's the thing, Darren. I love the exercise that you're doing right here, because the number 1 principle of programming is to build it with expansion in mind. Always build it so that you can always expand if you need to. Make sure that your program can always grow. Never program yourself into a corner. And that's kind of what the second or the first scenario, I guess, is what you were saying, would have been doing, right? The first scenario could have been programming yourself into a corner, because then later on, when the boss says it'll never happen, but then it's going to happen, and it's going to happen, then you got to go back and you got to rechange everything, especially when it comes to your infrastructure, and your database tables are your infrastructure. So you have to build that with expansion in mind. I love it.
Absolutely. I just realized I don't have a foreign key here for the questionnaire ID. Make that an int. And then I'm going to drag that guy over here.
Now, I hope you guys are seeing it. This was actually 1 item on a feature list. This was just 1 item on a feature list, and realize how much work is involved in just creating that 1 item on that feature list. And this is actually
we're not even done yet, right?
No, we're not even close. And this is a small item. And when you look at that list of features, this is one of the easier ones. This is a cherry picking item, and there's a lot to it. So when you're building a simple app that does one thing, then it's easy to do that. But something like this, where it's a system, when you're dealing with a feature rich program, that turns into a system very quickly. And there's a lot to it. There's a lot of tables, a lot of thinking through it,
Yeah. Got answers. Crystal, make it a primary key. Make sure it's an identity. Okay. Okay. Question. Did we get all of theirs? Question type, question text. So I would probably use, I was thinking about using name for a question, but you might want to have it completely separate. So I'm going to say in here, question text, and it might be really long. Okay. So let's put something here like 4,000. It might be a comprehension type of question. Yeah, and I'm just keeping an eye on the comments here. Speaking about multilingual apps, is it possible to get the keyboard or the tablet mobile displaying the acrylic language? Yeah, so I know in my I use an Android Samsung Fold, and I know when I open up the keyboard, I can set it to a different language. So I don't see why not. Yeah, so it might be more about the operating system than the application. Now, just keep in mind, if you are writing a multilingual application, whenever you pick a data type for these strings, you really should be using in varchar. And okay, so if you put in, it creates 2 bytes per character instead of 1. So in the English language, we can get by with 255 different possibilities. I'm like, well, the English language only has 26 letters, Darren. Why do you need 255? Well, that's a byte. If we went down any smaller, it would be a bit, which is either a 0 or a 1. A byte is 8 zeros and ones. That gives you 255 possibilities. And you have more than 26 characters because you need the uppercase versions of those 26 characters. You need a byte for each number or a dash or exclamation point. So, but let's say for Mandarin, you're going to need more than 255 possibilities, right? So yeah, good question. It should be part of your operating system. And then Ellie says, I have a lot of work ahead as I am working on a similar project. Yeah, very good. Let's see, manual, I mean automatical. Okay. And then how do you pronounce this, Kurt or Jeff? Bjorn?
Bjorn.
Okay.
Yeah.
The question, by selecting the language in the app, I want to get the keyboard switched automatically. Okay. I would have to look into that and think through that. So that's not something I would be able to answer on the fly like this. But these are great questions, guys.
Yeah, they are. Answering the comment on what Ellie was talking about, she says, I have a lot of work ahead of me. That's a good thing, though, isn't it? Isn't that a great thing to be able to have that kind of work, that project? I mean, if you like programming, if you like this kind of stuff, it's good to have that this is going to be a while, and plus it's job security. There's just a lot about it, the bad thing for me is when I don't have a project to work on, I'm bummed. I'm just absolutely bummed. I really like working on this stuff, man.
Very good. So we got question text in there, question type. Now for the answers, they're saying an answer ID, which I already have. Then a question ID. Okay, yeah, that's something that we definitely needed here. So let's add that. Question ID, and then be an integer. Now, what I would be tempted to do, and I probably would in the case of SharePoint, if I was using SharePoint, I would probably denormalize and have a little field here that has the question text. Because if I need to display this in a gallery, I might need to display the question text and the answer together in a gallery. Well, a gallery connects to one data source, right? If you want some data from a different table, you have to do like a lookup or a filter or whatever to bring in that other data. And that makes your application sluggish. So since it's SQL Server, I'm not going to do it because I can do my joins and views. So if you use SharePoint, then you want to create something in there for that. And yeah, pretty good. Okay, so for answer, we have answer text. And yeah, we need to give plenty of room for that. Okay. So we got question text. So here's answer, because the answer might be an essay. Okay, and we will say and we could use this answer text. It bothers me as a developer that, let's say the question type is a Boolean, right? It bothers me that I would only use one bit, and
you got this varchar sitting out there.
varchar 4000. Yeah.
No,
I don't think that if we did a 1 or 0 or the word true, false, or whatever, I don't believe it's going to be much of a concern if you look at how it's stored. You see how we have var? We could have say char 4000, and it would be taking up 4000 characters of space. But the fact that we said var here, it means variable length. So the amount of space that's being used, if we just said a capital Y for a yes, it's only going to use up that character.
that's right.
Okay. Now, one reason you wouldn't want to use that in that particular case is if we have a bunch of columns in here, and let's say SQL Server only allows 8,000 bytes within one record, or it might be much. When I was doing all my certifications, that's what it was, 8,000. So if I had one at 4,000, and then I had another answer that column that took up more thousand, then you're hurting for space there. We could have short answer, long answer type of thing, where we could probably denote true, false, yes, no. We could denote the other types, like date and time field. Date and field isn't going to be 1,000 characters. It's always going to.
Now we got a many to many going on here. I see a many. Now we got
It just depends on how slick you want it to be, right?
I see another table coming out of this thing, man. Right.
Yeah. Now, what's rough is the data type for the question. For the answer to this question was a date time, right? And so you put that date time right there, boom. Then if you try to use that in a filter within Power Apps, and you're trying to line a real date up in a date time picker with this column answer text, you're probably going to get some delegation. Like if the type's a mismatch, then Power Apps has a hard time getting that delegated right. So that's something else to think about.
Now, I'd like to step back just a little bit if we can for the people that are just getting started with this thing. So we've listed 3 different types. We're talking about data types here. And one of these days, Darren and I are going to do a long live stream on data types, okay, for the beginners. But for now, I just want you to understand that we listed 3 different types of data types just for strings, just for character type data. Yeah. So you got your varchar, you got your nchar, and you got your char, right? So the differences on those, Darren, if I'm correct in this, because I'm kind of new on this SQL Server stuff too, but the nchar is for different. It's carrying 2 bytes instead of 1, so it's dealing with per character, per letter that you put in. Like if you type the letter C, it's going to have 2 different bytes for that. Now that's for international stuff, right? That's to carry the international codes and all that, right?
Right.
So the N, you think in your mind that's international, right? So then I know that, it's not I, it's N, right? But international. And then varchar, var means variable. So that means, you can max that thing out. In fact, he had this answer text maxed out at 4,000, but you could just have a variable length. So each record could be a different amount because depending on how many characters get typed in that. When it says 4,000, that means it's allowing 4,000 characters being typed into that. Okay. And then you have your type char, which your type char is, it's going to be the exact amount. So you're going to give it a listing. Let's say you say char 30. It's going to, that your field is going to be 30 bytes wide for every record, Now you think, okay, that's not a big deal. But if you're writing this program for General Motors and you got 5 million records, that's going to come into some pretty incredibly large storage quickly, right? So you got to think about these things when you're building these tables out. But so these data types can get very complex when you're first learning this thing. But that's just I just kind of wanted to go over that one more time, kind of summarize that a little bit for you guys that are just kind of trying to pick up, because otherwise it kind of gets scattered, So
Absolutely.
very good. Thanks,
I
Darren.
do have, if anybody's interested, just real quick, and I'm not covering up with anything. These are all the data types that you can have for a column. Okay. So I'll just leave that up there as I say the next thing. So I created while Kurt was talking, I thought to myself, I want to have like a model table. Every table I create from here on out should, like, I can just copy and paste these columns for any new table. I always want an ID, always want a name, and those 4 on the created and modified. And then more than likely notes. Not every table needs a note, so you could remove it. But you see what I did while he was talking is I put in front of everything, because just think of, like, if somebody said, hey, I need that onboarding app and it needs to be multi-link, or it needs to be in Mandarin, and then so I have to go and change all this stuff. It's just best in today's connected age. Everything's like, can you imagine if Facebook, they didn't use variable link? Like, they're probably more than half the world wouldn't be able to use it. So you need to think big sometimes when you're designing applications. So that's what this little table is going to be. Okay, off to the side there. And all right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to save everything here. And I'm going to make sure the relationship goes from question. It's not going to allow me to scroll while it's processing. All right, guys, you're up. What's your best dad joke? We need to have some stuff ready for dead air. All I got are smiles.
Can't we do something different than dad jokes? Really?
Sure. Give me some ideas. I'm going to create an app that will keep track of these for us.
Oh,
I did create a dad. I called the application was called Dad. See, I keep all my dad jokes in a database. So I created an app called Database, and it kept track of all my dad jokes.
Database. Did get it? Database. I bet I know how to say. I mean, I don't even know how to do that dad joke. Okay, never mind. I can't do a dad joke. I can't even do a dad joke today. I don't know, man. Maybe I need.
Yeah, somebody told you at the beginning you need more coffee. I feel like I need more coffee today.
Yeah, I bet Jeff doesn't know this one.
Uh-oh.
You probably know it, Darren, but I bet Jeff doesn't know it. What's what is that fish that doesn't have any eyes?
Oh, you taking mine.
Mm.
Well, I know. I'm not going to say it.
You know what it is?
No.
What is it, Darren?
Shh. Shh. Fish with no eyes.
A fish with no eyes is
Definitely a dad joke.
so stupid. Yeah, so stupid.
So I've got all the tables that ChatGPT did the design for this, but I've got an issue. Okay, so we've got a questionnaire, and what I want to do is say, I need another table out here, like an occurrence of a questionnaire, or a the difference between a class and an object. You know what I mean? Like
Sure.
Questionnaire taken. Give me some ideas for table names for that.
Questionnaire taken. Questionnaire history.
Or completed.
Ooh. Yeah.
Completed questionnaire.
I like that. Let's go with that. All right. And so I've got this table out here called model table. It's going to save me tons of time. I also want to go back to all these tables that I did before and change the data types to in varchar, but at least this one will be set up right. And we'll make this a key. And I hope it brought over my default. Did it? Let's see, default. It didn't. All right, so we've got that. Maybe we could create a script that will do it. That will set up the identity. That would save me some time.
Just in the comments, what was that? Is it Albaz? He said a questionnaire is exactly what I'm working on right now, except I'd like for users to be able to leave and come back to continue where they left off. Is that something that you would want to have in yours too? And if that's the case, do you want it to be questions completed?
Well, they're not completed if they're in there.
Right. So maybe we need I don't know. I mean, just from what he said and what got listed there,
Yeah.
I thought, well, maybe that's a good point.
I'm not seeing any type of rename here. I sort of like the idea of like occurrence, questionnaire occurrence.
I'm thinking. Can't you hear the wheels turning? It's a little rusty here. It's a little rusty.
Yeah. That's an excellent point, Elbaz. In fact, I want to put in columns of when they start. Now I know the record dated as that's always going to be kept track of, but when it was started and then when they actually submitted it. I think those are 2 date timestamps that I would want to include. Okay, make that stay, and I'm going to refresh my table, so I've got a good list here, and this is a place to actually rename something. So completed. I'm going to rename that. It's at the bottom here. All right, Jeff, is that how you spell occurrence?
OCCURNS.
Yeah. Okay. ANCE.
Picasso.
I can't see it. Where is it? It's small.
Put it in the chat there. Put it up on the screen. There we go. Does that look right?
Yeah.
Of course, it looks weird with no space in between them. But,
right.
Right. So I am going to shut down the diagram because it had the wrong name in there. So yeah, I love this design work, design and planning. A lot of times people just want to jump into Power Apps, and you're missing a lot of fun. Okay, it took it out of my diagram. Oh, there's 2 R's in there?
Yeah. And an E.
Oh my goodness.
Huh.
I failed that.
Yeah. I did too at first glance. I had to go check it.
Gee whiz. I wonder if I can...
You know what? You are living proof that you don't need to know how to spell to be a software developer.
To be a programmer, right?
That's right. I used to say that all the time. Remember that? Because it's funny when I was teaching in the college on the whiteboards. It's so funny because the students would always, if I misspelled anything on there, they'd say, you misspelled this, you misspelled. Well, and you know what? Thank you for paying attention. It's good that they're paying attention, right? But I would always say that, this is just living proof that you don't need to know how to spell,
Yeah. Yeah, I was I think it was my if then else video, and I said parenthesis.
Oh boy.
Singular.
Oh my goodness.
And somebody in the comments, I don't think he was trying to be mean or whatever. Just, I don't know. I felt like if he hadn't pointed it out, I would the rest of my life say it incorrectly, but there's always an S whether it's singular or plural, parenthesis or parentheses would be the plural. I'll say
Right.
I or something like that. Okay. Question occurrence. So I want to know when it was started. Let me zoom in a little bit here. Some more what's going on here. It started 8 and or say completed. What other type of thing would we want to know? Well, we need to link this up to the questionnaire. So we need a question. My goodness. I have 2 N's in questionnaire.
Now we got to start the whole live stream over now, guys.
Yeah, we got to start over, guys.
Start over.
I gotta create a new database and everything. You know, with SharePoint, sometimes when you misspell something,
it's over.
you don't want to try to rename it. It's not always like that. Like it gives you a title field, you can change that to name. But over in Power Apps, you always have to use the old name, like Field 1 or something.
There is 2 N's in questionnaire.
Oh, there is.
You did it
Look
right.
at that. Look at
Oh
that.
my goodness.
You didn't know how smart you were, Darren.
I want you on all my live streams now, Jeff.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Well, that's funny. Yeah, sometimes I'm going to be on the spot too, I guess.
That's right. It's the fun of being a panelist.
Right.
All right, questionnaire ID. Is there any other linking that we want to do here? You know, you think of like a report or some information you might want to display on a screen. On December 21st, 1999, you answered this to this question, you know. If I had a link from this table to this table, we got a question ID here over here. Well, that's the question. Kurt, what do you think about having a link from question over to the occurrence? I mean, we could do a join for all this and then also a link from answer to question, because they're not really necessary, but you could do one big join and get it. What do you think about that? What's your...
Well, I mean, if you're building this thing for Power Apps, you don't have joins, right?
Well, we'd have to create a view that would do all the joins.
You'd have to create the view now. And since you're using SQL Server, you get to take advantage of those views. So yes, you should do that.
I know just by looking at this, there's an occurrence of a questionnaire being answered. Well, we need a user ID in here.
Yeah. And you're going to have multiple occurrences then, right?
Yeah, there's a one-to-many relationship there.
It could be a user using it more than one time and a user doing more than one question at one time or a questionnaire at one time.
Yeah. Repeat that again.
See, he listens to every third word I say, you know. So you could have a user doing more than one occurrence at one time, or I'm sorry, I can't remember how I said it now. Golly. Okay, so
you may have more than one occurrence. So like if you have one document that only needs to be filled out one time, or you may have something that needs to be done quarterly or monthly or biannually, something.
See, that's exactly the way I put it. Thank you, Jeff, for remembering how I said it.
All right.
So this relationship would account for both of those situations, I believe. Okay. But I want to know if you guys...
What happens if that now... Is there different types of questionnaires that the person could be using at one time?
Are you saying like they've got to work? They've got two laptops sitting in front of them. They're taking the same questionnaire at the same time with two different laptops. Is that?
No.
Am I picturing?
No. I'm saying I'm on a laptop. I'm halfway finished with this questionnaire, and I start another questionnaire over here.
Oh.
Okay.
A different type of questionnaire.
Right. So you would have two records here.
Right.
You
would have many questions to questionnaires to one user.
Yeah. You guys are making me think this morning or afternoon. It's quarter afternoon here.
Well, you asked me the question.
Yeah. No, this is good. This is good stuff.
Okay.
We're making great progress. I wanted digging through all this stuff.
Okay.
I was just saying, I said good morning. I'm like, sometimes you got to catch yourself. Like, is it really morning? You know?
Yeah. Well, when somebody asks me if it's good morning, they say, how are you doing today? Are you asking, or do you really want to know? That's, you know, I mean,
yeah. All right. So we got that user ID going there. And I want to make sure that I'm not missing any relationships that we need to have. I think this is good enough, and we should just be using our join skills to pull out the data how and when we need it. And yeah, so how do you guys feel about this ERD diagram? Do you think, just based on our feature list, this will account for everything that we need? I guess one thing is we'd have different questionnaires available, let's say at a hospital, for doctors and different ones for patients, right?
Yep.
I feel like we need a questionnaire type table. I think that's actually a good thing to have in here.
Could you just have a STED as a field?
That's a good question. So we could have a field here in questionnaire, and it would be questionnaire type, and there would just be single line of text. You know,
you could filter out the based on if is it for a doctor or for a patient. You know, if you had those two types, and you could have 3 different types if you needed to. Yeah.
Well, I feel like now that we've gone down this road, Kurt, we really need a user type.
That's right. A user type that'll make coffee for us in the morning. Here we go, guys. We're going to get this thing to make coffee for us in the morning yet. It's going to happen. We might get it done before noon or 1 o'clock if it's Eastern time. Yeah. Nick says, I'm ready to go to bed.
So that means over here on users,
Nick's over here said Mego.
Mego. What does Mego mean?
What's that? What's Mego mean, Jeff? Do you know?
My eyes glazed over.
Yeah. Okay. You guys have been indoctrinated now.
I learned that one.
You did.
User type ID. Make that integer.
You can be a professional programmer now that you know Mego. That's the second most important algorithm or acronym in programming, Mego. The first is what? What's the first most important acronym in programming to know?
I probably
SQL.
have heard you say it.
What do you think it is? The SQL. What did you say, Jeff?
I've probably heard you say it, but it's not coming to me.
TLAR. TLAR is the most important.
Larson method. TLAR.
Yeah. You know what that means, Jeff? TLAR?
Nope.
That looks about right. Yep. That is the most important acronym known in programming. That looks about right. That's scientific, highly scientific.
Yeah. So for questionnaire type, we've got the name there of the questionnaire, but we need to have, you know what, Kurt? We need something else in between these two tables. I'm thinking this would be a one-to-many relationship. Patients take all these questions, you know, and then, but let's say it's an employee type of questionnaire, but I've got some questionnaires that would apply to everybody, both employees and contractors. Then I've got some questionnaires that are good for only contractors. So it needs to be a many-to-many relationship.
You're just not going to stop until you get that man-to-many relationship with this thing.
We're going to be doing so many many-to-many relationships. Everybody will completely understand normalization and many-to-manys. And
well, can't that be just a different type? So if you have a type of question that's good for both these, you're talking about you could have like 10 different types of users, and these questionnaires are only good for 2 of them, and these questionnaires might be good for 3 of them. Well, now you're going to have
overlap. You know, there could be a general questionnaire that applies to not only the patients, the doctors, everybody. So then what are you going to do? You're going to create a general one for every type.
So you're going to have to do a many-to-many that's going to, well, if you've got questionnaires that are only good for these 2 users, but not the rest of them, and then you got ones that are for these 2 users, but not the rest of those. Yeah. So you got, sounds like another
We're building a good, robust system here. So this is good. This is the type of thing I want to do with this application, because the quiz application, we spent 2 hours doing that application, and we did it. But if we had done all this, it would have been like a week-long live stream or something. I don't know. Would have to broken it down.
We need to schedule these ERD designs so that we can do these during like 10-hour live streams, like these marathons, you know?
Yeah.
For this
we'll have all the accelerator students come in with their ERDs and we'll look at them.
Bring your sleeping bag and your, you know, we're gonna have a slumber party here. It's gonna be an ERD creation here, all nighter here, guys. Here we go. Bring your hot pockets.
Your hot pockets. I know this is all getting really small on the screen here. Did you know, Kurt, you see this horizontal scroll bar? Yeah. You know why people don't mind vertical scroll bars and they hate horizontal ones? Because you use that little mouse wheel, right? On your mouse. Did you know if you hold down Shift, you can go right to left? But I've never tried it in this one, so it doesn't work here. True? And in other applications, it does work. Hold on Shift and use the wheel on your mouse. You'll go left to right.
I have 2 wheels on my mouse. I have a one that I use on my thumb that goes left and right, and that's how I do sideways. And then I got one that goes,
Go here, questionnaire type ID. You guys are going to learn how to do some really interesting joins by the time we're done with all this.
Okay. Either that or they're going to want to quit. One of those 2.
This would be an advanced type of, the SQL Server. You know, there's a lot more to it. You got a lot more power, and with great power come you need great responsibility, right?
Yeah, this is powers for beginners right here, guys.
Yeah.
Good stuff, man.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to where we'll go from here. For some reason, YouTube thinks you're going to like this video next. Let's see if they're right. Or you can select this playlist, which I've selected for you based on the content you're currently watching. Guys, got to hurry. Click one of them. Otherwise, YouTube's going to autoplay some other video.